Good morning, friends. I'm going to be late to work today because I have to wait for the frost to thaw on my car. I could go out and scrape it, but instead I thought, let's start Vlogmas day 8. 9? What day even is today? The 9th. Hello and welcome to another day of Vlogmas. I realized last night as I was getting ready for bed that I had no video going up today. So this is a little bit later in the day than some of my other videos. And it's gonna be a little bit of a vlog this morning, but also later I'm going to talk about some of my disappointing reads of the year. This is a subject that came up during one of my lives recently, and I thought that would make a good video. And I like to spend a lot of time talking about the books I loved during the year, so we're just going to take this one video to talk about some disappointing reads, but I have to wait until the little dude takes a nap. I think I'm clear enough to drive, so I need to get going. Whoa, that is so cool. Isn't that so beautiful? Right, I've got him down for his nap. We had such a good time going to the botanical gardens. They have a little library there for him to play. They had some Christmas trees set up inside, and we did walk around outside a little bit as well. So I hope you enjoyed the clips of that. But now I have gone through my Goodreads and I wrote down a list of 20 books that were a bit of a bummer for me this year. I did not include any that I DNF'd. So all of these books I have finished, and they were a bit of a bummer. So in order of when I read them, because I started in January, so we'll go from the ones from the beginning of the year and work our way towards the end of the year. And because I'm doing this at work and I want to get it up right away today, I'm not gonna put in pictures this time. And because they're disappointing reads, I'm not gonna give any additional press to these, because for me, I'm not recommending them. They were bummers for me. However, every reader is different, and I know there are some on this list that other people have absolutely loved. So, I mean, if you liked it and I didn't, we can still be book friends. I'm just telling you that as I look through the list, these 20 books are a bit of a bummer in my mind. I'm going to see if I can finagle a way to not have to hold my phone, because I feel like I'll be too shaky. So I'll be right back. Okay, if I sit a little sideways on the couch, I've got this so that you're resting on my computer now. Okay, so I've got my list in front of me on the computer, so I'm going to be looking over there every once in a while. But here are my disappointing reads in order of when I read them for 2021. The first one I did as a buddy read with Chloe B, and it was Everybody Always by Bob Goff. It's a nonfiction, Christian nonfiction, and I have seen Bob Goff speak in person, and I must say that his writing style is very similar to his speaking style, but it works better in person, I think, than in a book. He has a lot of outrageous stories of things that have happened to him in his life. And it started to feel a little bit unbelievable and possibly pretentious and just so far beyond the scope of anything that's relatable to me that I did not appreciate this book at all. There were a few things here and there that I thought were worthwhile, but by the end, I just was ready to be done with it. So that was a bit of a disappointment. The second one is The Mystery of Mrs. Christie by Marie Benedict. This was on my anticipated reads list for January through March last year, or earlier this year. And I was a little bit bummed out by it. I thought it was okay, but that's it. It was just okay. And I was really anticipating it because I thought it would be so interesting to imagine what happened to Agatha Christie during the 11 days that she went missing. But I didn't like the Agatha character. I didn't like the husband character. I felt like the structure of the book was a little bit too choppy for me. And ultimately, I just didn't care for it. So that was a huge bummer. The third one is a sad one for me because I finished up the Emily trilogy by Ella Montgomery. I had started it towards the end of 2020, and then I finished it in January, I think. And so I read Emily's Quest. I really enjoyed a lot of this trilogy, but there is one storyline involving an older man that runs through all three books, and it's super creepy in the first book, and it just gets worse as the trilogy goes on. And so for that reason, really alone, because I loved Emily. I liked the drama with her family. I liked her love of nature and her love of writing and the little snippets of what we got to see of her writing. I liked the friendships and the drama that was in the friendship groups. It was just this storyline with the older man that progressed through the three books that I really could not get behind it. And it ruined the books for me. So huge bummer on that one. The next one is Pride by E.B. Zaboy. This is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice set in, I want to say, Brooklyn. There was aspects that I liked about it. I liked the idea of it, but ultimately it just didn't work for me. I found it too YA. I want to say it is YA. So is that a thing that it can be too YA? The characters and the story didn't have the same charm as Pride and Prejudice does for me. And maybe that's just because of the nostalgia attached to it, or I don't know, that I've read Pride and Prejudice so many times, but it just didn't work for me overall. So bummer. The next two are middle grade. The first one is Hatchet by Gary Paulson. I love survivor stories, and I was really hoping to love this one, but I listened to it on audio and I just did not like the audiobook of this book. There was something about the structure. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was something about it that I just really did not like. So I did not enjoy listening to Hatchet at all. It's a bummer because I do typically love a survival story. Then we have The Brave by James Bird. This was the group read for middle grade March this year, and I wanted to love it. And there was aspects of it that I really did like, but I feel like this should be marketed as a YA and not a middle grade, and that really impacted my enjoyment of the book, because it is marketed towards middle grade, but there are some scenes and some themes that really just are better suited for YA. I mean, it wasn't a complete dud. It was just okay for me, and I wanted it to be great. So it's still in this list of bummers, because while I did finish it and had some parts of it that I did enjoy, I just didn't love it as much as I was hoping to. So that's a bummer. And then the next one is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. And honestly, I don't really remember this book. I think I remember a lot of people really liking this one. And so I really wanted to like it as well. And I think it's about this woman who sees this guy in her dreams and then, or like sees what could happen 5 years later. Was there an affair in this one or something? I don't remember what it was, but I remember being bummed about it. So when I see the cover of it now, I'm just like, oh yeah, I didn't like that book. And I don't really remember why. So that's a bummer. It didn't stick in my head at all. I am sorry that I don't remember why I didn't love it. The next one is one that I read for an old NetGalley. This is one of the early NetGalley releases that I got, and it's from like 2017, I think, and it's The 100 Lies of Lizzie Lovett. And I think the cover of this is super cute. I remember the cover. It's by, who's the author? The author is Chelsea Sidoti. And I just remember it being very unrealistic. There's a girl in high school that goes missing, and this other girl becomes kind of obsessed about what happened to her, about finding out what happened to her, to the point where she goes to get a job where this girl worked, to the point where she has a relationship with this girl's boyfriend. I think this is the biggest thing that bothered me, is that this boy was so much older. He wasn't a high school boy, and this girl was still in high school, and it just was an inappropriate age difference relationship, and I just really don't like that. So that was the big negative for me, besides the fact that the characters were annoying. The next one is one of my patron book club books, and I was so bummed, but I guess out of 12 to have one that was not a big hit is okay. But The Garden of Small Beginnings by Abby Waxman was just not the book for me. And I should have known, because The Bookish Life of Nina Hill was not for me either. I think Abby Waxman and I just have a totally different sense of humor. I thought that this book came across as crass and rude, and the humor was ridiculous, and everything throughout the book, like almost every conversation had some kind of overt sexual innuendo, or the main character was thinking about things in a sexual way. It just was overly sexualized. Unbelievable. They're working on building a garden, and at one point she and the love interest sit down in the tomatoes and start making out, and nobody sees them. I'm like, tomato plants are not that bushy. I don't know how that works, I guess. I don't know. So that was just one little tiny scene, but that book as a whole was just not for me. Not for me. And I don't think anybody in my patron group that talked about it with me liked it either. So I was not alone in my dislike for that book. Bummer. But I know some people really like Abby Waxman, and if she matches your sense of humor, then you might like it. But it just wasn't for me at all. The next one is one, I don't know that I even talked about this on my channel, because I was reading it for a video that I wanted to do about, like, a secret TBR video about reading 3 books that have been super popular that I had no interest in reading, and seeing if I was right. And then I finished this one and I didn't like it. And I was like, I don't even want to read the other 2. I already know I don't want to read them. Why would I read them? So the book that I'm talking about is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This was not the book for me. I thought there were moments that were very sweet and lovely, but I thought the agenda was pushed really hard. And there's one character, like, from a faith standpoint, there was one character who was, it just crossed the line for me in being a bit sacrilegious. And I know not everybody has that opinion about it, but there just was one character that for me, it was too casual and cutesy, when to me that it just felt very sacrilegious. So all of those reasons, I am the exception that makes the rule. I know so many people love The House in the Cerulean Sea. It just wasn't for me. The next one is another one that was on my anticipated reads list for the year, and it is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. I really wanted to love this book, and it feels like a Krista book. It's historical fiction set around the time set around the writing of the Oxford English Dictionary, the huge Oxford English Dictionary. And there were aspects of this that were very interesting. But the pacing, it had a lot of pacing issues for me. And in the story, our main character girl grows up. Her father is one of the men working on the writing of the dictionary, and she begins collecting words that get discarded, that they're not going to include. And then she kind of makes this her mission to collect words that are not being included in the dictionary. And often these words are words mostly used by lower class people, or by women in particular. And I think that the words that she was collecting often were sexual in nature. Also, the book just had a lot of really, I guess, feminist undertones, or like pushed a really strong feminist agenda. And I'm not like opposed to some of that, but it it just didn't work for me in this story. The next one is also on my anticipated reads list for the year, was on my anticipated read list, and that is Anne of Manhattan by Brina Starler. I should know better because I love Anne so much, and this was a modern day Anne of Green Gables retelling where Anne is a student in college in Manhattan, obviously. The thing that just made this a bit of a bummer is that it just was over sexualized and was missing the charm and lovely nature of Anne of Green Gables. I did enjoy the reading of it, but it was too steamy at times for me. So yeah, I didn't care for that one. Big Summer by Jennifer Weiner is the next one. Weiner. And this was trying to be two different things. It starts out being this contemporary romance, but then there's also this mystery, and it like switches halfway through. So the tone of the book is totally different halfway through. And it just was a miss. Just a miss. The next one is also one that I know a lot of people love. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I enjoyed the reading of this book, but when I finished, I just felt like, that's it. I think Emily Henry does great with banter and dialogue. I think it was a fun read. The pacing was great. So there was definitely things I liked about it, but this big moment of conflict that affects the whole story didn't feel worth it. Once we learn what it is, I was just like, what? Like, that is the point of conflict? I don't know. It left me feeling frustrated. So that's what, put it on the list. The next one is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which is another one. A lot of people really loved The Vanishing Half a couple years ago. I really wanted to read it. It was on a 5-star predictions list for me earlier this year, and it was a miss, a big miss. I didn't care for the characters. I didn't understand their motivations. And I don't think it's just that I didn't understand it. I don't think it was given what their motivations were. And so I wasn't able to really ever feel like I connected with them. And we're following these two sisters, and I cared more about the one daughter than about the sisters. It was also just kind of checking boxes as far as cultural relevance and diversity and different things, rather than us truly caring about the story. It was almost like some characters and situations were just thrown in so boxes could be checked. And that's 100% just my perception of things. Maybe that's not what was happening, but that's how it came across to me. So do with that what you will. The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker is my next one. And I was so bummed by this because it's a pandemic book and it had so much potential. There was so much potential for this to be an interesting story, and it just didn't go there. I was really bummed by that because the idea of this pandemic of sleeping people starting at this college, there was like one paragraph about how these people who fell asleep, that was the pandemic, that people would fall asleep and be asleep for ages and then just wake up. There was one paragraph that talked about while they were sleeping, their brain activity was higher than when they were awake. And that was it. I'm like, I want to know more about that. Tell me more about what is actually happening to these people and where did it come from? Where is it going? And it was really more about these two people's reaction to the pandemic and the spread of it and how this town like quarantined itself. And yeah, it had a lot more potential than what it lived up to. It didn't live up to its potential, I should say. 4 more. The next one that I read pretty recently is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. While I listened to The Maidens, I was enjoying it. I was wanting to know what happened. I was invested in the story. Upon finishing the story, I really didn't like the ending. And the farther away I get from reading this book, I really didn't like the main character. And I just really don't like where he took things in this book. So I was really bummed looking back on that, even though I enjoyed it while reading it. The next one is Waves of Mercy by Lynn Austin. This is a Christian fiction. And oh man, I was so bummed by this book because it's been a long time since I've read like a straight historical fiction Christian book, which I have quite a few of them on my shelves. I did read a few this year, but this one just felt... Someone said they like it when I say eye-rolly. It felt eye-rolly. It was so cheesy at times. It was very in-your-face preachy, but not in a way that felt like real dialogue. I'm reading a book now that is a Christian fiction that was recommended by one of my patrons. There are things that I'm not liking about it, but I'm really liking how it's addressing these characters and their faith, and it feels very real. Even though it's all the way through this book, it's definitely a Christian fiction. But Waves of Mercy felt fake to me. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like people would really be having these conversations. And I don't like that. I like a Christian fiction. I love Christian fiction. I had a season where that was all that I read. I just didn't like this one. It was a big bummer. Very cheesy and not for me. Not for me at all. The next one I'm also really bummed by is House at Riverton by Kate Morton. I have read a few Kate Mortons that I really liked. This one was not one of them. The other Kate Mortons that I've read have had parts in them that were on the slower side. Her books are not page turners. They're definitely slower reads for me. And so I was expecting that going into House at Riverton, but it never recovered. It never got to a point where I couldn't stop turning pages. I was really let down by reading House at Riverton. I read it with a small group of friends, and I think I was the one who liked it the least among us. There were aspects that I liked. I liked talking about it with the other girls, but overall it just was way too slow for my taste, and I just didn't find that I cared about the characters at all. And the final one I feel like I've talked about quite a bit lately is Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. I wanted to like this book so much because I know so many of you like this book. When I finished it, I'm like, maybe I just don't like circus books. But when I think about it, I liked Night Circus. I liked The Life She Was Given by Ellen Marie Wiseman. And I just read Orphan's Tale, and I liked that. Those are all circus books that I have liked. So I'm not going to let Water for Elephants turn me off when it comes to circus books. But I just really didn't care for the characters, and I did not like that the main romance throughout the story was an affair. And there was like animal cruelty and stuff by a man that we didn't like anyway, we weren't supposed to like. I did feel like it was overly sexualized at certain parts, and it just wasn't the book for me. So big bummer. That is it. Those are my 20 books that I just didn't care for this year. And that is all that I'm going to talk about them. Any yearly reflection videos coming up throughout the rest of the month, I want to spend on books that I really liked or that surprised me or whatever. I don't want to spend any more time on bummer books because they don't need to have any more time in my mind. I totally can appreciate that they all have positives to them as well. And we can most certainly still be friends if some of your favorites or books that you loved were on this list. They just weren't for me, and that's okay. Every book has its readers. I was just not the reader for this list of 20 books. So that is going to be it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed this not so short list of disappointing reads this year. I would love to chat about these books or any books that was a bummer for you down in the comments below, or anything else you want to talk about. You guys know I love talking to you down there, and I will see you in another Vlogmas video tomorrow. Bye.